Welcome back into the workshop. It is now all of 30 minutes ago since the last video, but getting some of the items down off the top shelf, I thought I'd spend just a couple of moments talking about what I'm trying to do with it and replacing it hopefully with the bench dog setup array. What we have here is one row of clamps that allows me to make up a particular type of frame that I had anticipated creating a whole business around, and as such it needed to function well, quickly, easily, etc. So this is one side of it where the frame components could sit in here, elevated up off the surface to some degree, but be restricted by these aluminium blocks. Aluminium blocks are screwed into the grid of holes that I had anticipated drilling, and did. And while in theory all holes should line up, in practice not all holes did. So over time I developed this approach where I'd use an aluminium block and I could trim the aluminium block down by a whisker every time, put it back in place. It's securely held, so it holds the frames rigidly. To the extent I've actually got a set of aluminium rails which were also cut exactly to length of 1.8 meters, and then they would lie in against here to ensure that all three are in line. And into that I had spacer rails that would push the two sets of aluminium rails apart. Now it's timber frames that I'm making, but I was using those aluminium sections as, well, gauge rods you could say, or rails, to ensure that my assembly is accurate, because as well as we would want to think our holes were drilled, yeah, it was down to the last mil or two that they weren't. That's where the setup for this, if I replace this type of approach, and I like this one for several reasons, but it kind of was the forerunner for the new bench dog setup of the bench. This is an independent panel that can be placed into a bench with bench dog holes or registration points, and then it can be lifted off and put aside and stored, because you're not using this all that often, and you don't need to have, like hundreds of holes in these panels. You only need the ones that are necessary for the particular job, and at the end of the job you can pull that section off and put them away. And that's what I've done there. These are the other ones of it. I had anticipated making individual blocks like this, panels like this, but as I developed the idea, in fact that would be the pair of it there, no it's not, that's actually a different one. It says middle. Okay, so it's not the one I was thinking. But these ones here would be the end ones, and I could place them wherever I wanted on the bench, the bench itself. But what I did find was that having a set of stops and clamps enabled me to have a starting point upon which I can make the other panels and clamps register. All well and fine, but when you're wanting to get down to the last little bit, you do need to have some internal flexibility, because if you do set something up and you spend a lot of time and perhaps cost, then finding that it doesn't work quite right means it's very difficult to set or to tune. And this approach did allow that tunability by having the set blocks here. Sorry, I wasn't pointing the camera in the right direction, but to have these set blocks here adjustable in the fact that I could cut the darn things or replace them. It's much easier to do that. than have a theoretical perfect setup for your bench. Well, that was my experience anyway, and that's possibly because I didn't have all the finesse in creating the accurate worktop. These are the laser strips that I talked about some time ago. These are probably only 3 or 4 mils thick, but they're the ones that I had laser cut many years ago, and the ones that I use to set up the 3-4-5 method for my holes. That worked really well until it didn't, and that was because I was using the holes, to actually guide the drill down into the surfaces. And of course, many uses meant that they became sloppy, and that's no good for accuracy. And that's where Peter Parfitt, when he was explaining about his use of the path system, he did make the comment that I realised I hadn't followed, because I didn't know anything about the path system back then, because this was several years ago I made these. And in fact, it was 6 years ago. It was right before one of the lockdowns for COVID, and I had just got these back before the lockdown, so that was like really, really lucky. So that times that. And if you start in a particular position using the 3-4-5 method, you get a much better chance of accuracy, because small, imperceivably small errors can be created unawares to you, and then by the time you do a full length of an MFT top, you've got an error. Well, that's exactly what I had with this, as it turned out. And now, knowing what I know from Peter, I would use the new approach much differently. Plus, my drill never touches the actual holes themselves. They will always be pristine. And it's the drill guides that I'll be able to use. These very guides here that came with the this particular rail drill guide. I'm using those to guide my drill bits, meaning my rails will never have to be, or don't risk the chance of getting slogged out, so they stay good. Anyway, this was the precursor to what I want to do. Don't know whether I'll be carrying on with this. This, as I think I might have mentioned before, was the beginnings of a business, and that may not now come about, but I need to keep these because these have been set up really, really well. As simple as they look, there was probably two or 3 years over a period of time, I looked and re-looked at doing it, this sort of thing, and wound up with this version of it. Still looks pretty fundamental and Heath Robinson-like, but it actually works particularly well, and it's flexible. It allowed me to do all the different iterations of this frame that I'm talking about, so that I can, at a drop of a hat, alter things, and that's what the bench dog type approach, and this, is all about. There's more to this than meets the eye, I could say, and it was dead flaming accurate, and I was quite pleased with that. And robust was the big thing. So yeah, that was. I was just about to pop this away for storage, so I can get my track saws up there, track saw rail guides, and I thought before I pop them away, I'll show you some dust. Ugh, terrible. And show you the setups and what I'm anticipating replacing. I did mention that the rails that I would set up to make the frames were elevated. That was to allow the clamp to pointing camera, allow the clamp to push down on the junction of the frame, and puts all the pressure only at that point. If you try and do that when it's sitting on a surface, you are likely to get the surface and the imperfections of the rail, if there's any, to interfere, and you won't get the pressure points where you want, even to the point where I've got a little accessory where it pushes down on either side of it to give maximum pressure to that joint. So, and it's all those wee things that you've got to figure out only through experimentation, trial and error, how it does actually work, rather than just saying, well, this is a good idea, let's go ahead and do it and get into it. One of my friend who was going to be my business partner, his wife was saying, well, you just get in and do it. And I'm going, no, I'm not even prepared to start if I can't get some of these issues sorted, because all it would take was for an order to have come in for 20 or 30 of these things. We would have been really pushed hard to be able to do them properly and well and economically. So my natural reticence of 45 years of being a builder is have at least a thoroughly thought through plan. It doesn't have to be the final one, but don't rush at it like a lot of people do. Caveat: a lot of successful people just rush in and they get things sorted as they go through. That's fine. My personality is not that type, so I'm a closet engineer. So I've said that very many times in the past. So that was my frame clamp guide system. Pretty fundamental. Nothing that anything someone else hasn't done in the past, but that was mine. Okay, that's it. Just a brief one, sort of. Okay. I'll see you in the next one now. Bye.